Right. 1, 2, 5. Lisa. 3.
That is just trickery, what these clowns are doing. You do not understand, mister. This is just scientific evidence. I cannot believe this is happening. Okay. En of de aarde nou werkelijk plat. So yeah,
Sorry,
if you
what?
use the visual lens to trick people into believing that the horizon does not en toen hebben wij een video over hem gemaakt en dan hebben we hem ook nooit meer gezien. Als je nou met ons in dialoog gaat, dan kunnen wij wat leren misschien. Ze klappen naar hem vast als aan een teddybeer. He films with a fisheye lens. I just see right here that he uses a fisheye lens. Just go 5 seconds back and you see that already. I cannot believe this is happening. Okay. He uses a fisheye
Okay,
lens. Just go, 5
let's give
seconds
this a
back and
try.
you see that already.
How's life?
Yes, life is pretty good, eh? I'm retired, as you know, so can't complain.
Yeah.
I'm
already enjoying
you
my
do
own
not understand,
semi-retirement.
This is just
Okay.
I'm gonna turn Jouke off. I'll let him play in the back, and because even with a little noise, it's distracting.
Yeah.
So
Having to look at him is distracting.
bye, Jouke. We can watch him.
So we are going to discuss our friend Jouke and the last interview you had with him.
Yeah. Did you see he uploaded his own recording of it?
Yeah, but I haven't watched it entirely because I thought it would be just a copy he got from you. But
yeah, well, the nice part is he put his own videos in it, so that's good.
Okay, so then I could have seen what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, it's basically his own video that he's rehashing again, and then, like I said, he does a mirror that was on Renty's site, I think.
Yeah.
Like the link I mentioned on the skyline of Chicago.
Ah, my God. Yeah.
I was not really interested in discussing that even further because it's just another, what is it, Gish gallop. He's trying to move the goalpost.
Yeah, but it's also a completely stupid and irrelevant video and argument. One of the things he could do is simply go to my channel and have a look at a video I made on perspective, where as far as the guys were right, I did also use contributions of flat earthers, so to have a sort of bit more independent type of video and explanation about perspective.
Yeah.
And once people understand that, then the next step is to understand curvature and what you would see or would not be able to see from that skyline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But we had an agenda. We are already drifting.
Yeah. We can cut the pace. Don't worry.
It's just as if we are a couple of consultants, huh?
Yes. But we have to charge for it, then, eh?
Right. So, intro.
Yes. You start. I start.
It says here you start. Oh,
okay.
no, you, I mean, and I would be you. So I start. Well, basically, the avatar of mine says enough. I'm a research director. That's at least the job I had for the last, 8-9 years.
Yeah.
And before that, actually, all the work I've done was always in telecommunication and especially the protection of the people using the telecommunications. So for the military, for our government, for the embassies, later for the captains of industry. And then after I've had done that like 15 years, I stepped over to the consumer part within the company called Philips and started to work on a protection system for satellite television. And that part was sold when it was making a lot of money. And when I came to that group, including the whole business, I found out that they were not that very innovative, and we had some discussions, and then they said, okay, if you can make up a plan for a research department, go ahead. And I did, and it was approved, and I have set up a research team in the high-tech campus in Eindhoven, the smartest square kilometer in the world.
Yes. That was a point I was just thinking about, you know. We talked about that earlier, about, what is it? The positioning of satellite dishes.
Mm-hmm.
That's, of course, again, a great example of whether or not there are satellites.
Yeah, what you can very clearly see is the more you go south in the direction of the equator, the more the dishes have to be pointed upward.
Straight up, yeah, here, yeah.
Up to a point where they're almost straight up. Yeah. But otherwise, if there are no satellites, then we made millions with stuff that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, you know, flat earthers are gonna claim that you're bouncing them off the, what is it? The dome.
Okay. No. Now, well, that doesn't really work because the dome is not that high. So then the signal would be back much sooner than it does via satellite. So that's very easy to check.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So that was my intro.
Yes, okay. My intro, well, it's basically the same. I live in Indonesia for about 20 years, 20 plus years now. I stopped counting at 15. Did most of my work in auditing first in the forestry sector, then also moved on to the oil palm sector. Now getting into training of new auditors and working with a team to try to safeguard the competence of auditors. So we see quite a lot of people that get a lovely certificate, and so they're basically qualified to do the work, but you see that very few are actually competent to do this, with a lot of problems of even doing adequate sampling size. I spoke with a professor here at the local university, and they were saying, what should we train these people? And I said, well, not even the basic elements of stratified sampling they know. And the guy, his mouth literally fell open. He was like, they don't understand that. And it's so simple, you know, once you explain this, you split up a community in male versus female, young versus old, and based on that you do your sampling. It's not that difficult, but they completely don't understand that, auditors here.
And do they also don't understand statistics in general?
Oh God, absolutely not. So what I'm going to work on with this professor is to try to do a standard approach to use of very small samples. So basically, auditors, we are only there for at best 2 weeks in a year to verify stuff. Out of those 2 weeks, there is like only 1 or 2 days where you do interviews with local people. So these sample sizes are going to be extremely small, and we need to really set thresholds on how to approach that. And if there is insufficient evidence, you know, too much variation or whatever, then you need to keep on going sampling. That's what not being. That's what not being done. Not what is not being done. And that has, to the best of my knowledge, nobody has ever tried to work that out, even for auditors. And there must be so much research on that already.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any contacts here with some of the auditing companies or universities. Maybe they could have some information you are looking for. Yeah.
Well, that's the whole point. So you've got the Center for International Forest Research has never looked into auditing. IPB, I now got interested. They're very excited about these very, very simple approaches. So that's nice.
Oh.
That's what I should have put in. That's nice, from Mrs. Brown. Have you seen that?
No, I don't think so.
Oh God, hilarious. Mrs. Brown's voice. I love all these, the English, what is it, irony and humor. Okay, the background, like you mentioned, we need to talk about, we do a post-mortem of the last discussion with Jouke. as things are looking, I don't expect he will do another one. He's gone very quiet suddenly. He's not responding on email and Skype. But definitely still going to try to entice him to do a 2-on-2. You and me versus him and Willy.
Yeah.
And then, shall we move on to his method?
Yeah, we could. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things I would like to state, and that was quite strange, is the intro he gave on how he became a flat earther.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, we had that, and what amazed me is that I'm not sure, but he's probably at least 25 years old, maybe a bit older, and he then claimed that in 2016 he became interested in the flat Earth, and he was studying the topic of geocentrism. And then I think by myself, what the hell? You are that age, you are walking around in this world, and then you suddenly think there's something wrong. And the 2 points he somehow then mentions that convinced him was that the Earth should be stationary.
Yeah.
Where the only thing he has for that is that he doesn't feel movement. Well, that's good, because you shouldn't. It would be terrible if he would feel movement on a moving Earth. And then he does. Then he discovered lice, and he starts with NASA. And I think it's so silly. Yeah? And he starts already Gish galloping, because then he starts also about what then the motive would be for the globe, and apparently there is something like scientism, which is of course a non-existing thing.
Yeah, lovely.
And they want, and they want to have God out of the picture. But I think let's go back first to when people realized it was a globe. Yeah. 500, 600, maybe 700 years before Christ.
Yeah.
There was no God from the Bible that they needed to get out of the picture. It was not even an issue.
No, so, I think none of these religions at the time really made an issue out of it.
No, indeed. And as far as I know, that maybe the Egyptians have thought the Earth was flat, they at least understood that the sun was going below, then came up, and then below again.
Yeah.
Something they probably noticed, because when you're near the equator in the south of your country, you can actually see the way the shades are, that it's not a sun hovering above a plane, but it's actually coming somewhere from below and then going up all around, giving no shade, let's say during the equinox, and then going down on the other side, and that the shades all are in one single line during such a day.
Yeah.
And anybody understanding a little bit or being able to play around with a torch at night and a stick in the ground could simulate and figure out, okay, if I want to see the shade of my stick with this torch act this way or that way, then I need to move my torch like this. And so they could deduct, very simple, that the sun was not hovering above, but just going around.
Yeah.
And for me, that is then immediately the thing that came out each time, is that he hasn't done any investigation himself, not even the most simple experiment. You have pointed out to him, for instance, to go out and look at ISS that was hovering above.
Yeah, I don't think he did that.
No, sure, of course he didn't. He also, because I pointed that out earlier last year at it was, I think, this 20th of September, but now we have had the 20th of March. There was an equinox again. That is, for instance, a nice moment that you can go out. Everybody can go out with a compass and see where the sun rises and where the sun sets. And the strange thing is, on the entire Earth, it is exactly in the east that day, and it sets exactly in the west. Everybody can check that. You don't need any special tools. You only need a compass, and you would have had at least something to think about. He doesn't do that as well.
Yeah.
So He's probably has been flying he must have been flying because he was in the Philippines. He's now back in the Netherlands. He should have noticed that when he was on the runway, the horizon looking out of the window was probably at the wingtip or maybe a little bit above the wingtip, and that when he was in the air, that at that moment the horizon would be below the wingtip, so the horizon would have dropped.
Yes,
He also could download a simple a tool on his phone. Many people use that at the moment. It's a sort of virtual theodolite, and then you can, on any height, just see with your mobile where the horizon is, and then see whether it dropped or not. So there's a whole scale of very simple tests Jouke could do. He promised that 2 years ago when he started with his channel.
Yeah, that's the one I forgot to add. Yeah.
So far, he hasn't done shit. The only thing he does is come up also with old videos of people that have been debunked over and over again. So he's not even up to par or on the level at the moment of where the discussions go.
Yeah. It was a funny, I think Red's Rhetoric and a few guys did this, using their handphones, even a very simple test you can do by turning your handphone, right?
Yeah.
And it will always pop down again your screen. It will always find where gravity points.
Yeah.
So things like that. That was basically my whole point to him. I mean, I got into the flat Earth business basically 2 days before I made my first remark on his website. Somebody sent a link to that, and I read it, and I was like, man, you're using the wrong tools to try to prove what you're trying to prove. And then he got so upset he started responding to it, and that was basically where I started.
Yeah.
And,
now I've given a lot of comments, so I was blocked immediately because they thought I was not too nice to them. But they made a video on that in Dutch, and then I could show them all the comments I had given, and that they had already blocked me before I, for the first time, even cursed to them.
Yeah.
So, and the biggest fun part was that while I was making that video, his brother-in-arms, Willy Broders, sent another comment, and which wasn't that nice. So, the ones trolling and being impolite was more Jouke and his friend than I was, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's a silly point. I mean, they're putting all these ridiculous videos online. People get upset about it, and they try to discuss with them, and they literally reject everything you say. You immediately. Yeah. This was hilarious. Also in the discussion, as soon as there's something he doesn't understand or doesn't believe, then he calls it occult. Yeah. That was one point in there. I was like, "What are you saying? Just because you don't understand it, you call it occult?"
Yeah, apparently everything in the world is occult.
Yeah.
And then when his friend Willy Broders became ill, the first thing they do is go to scientists or doctors in the hospital and to get him fixed.
Yeah? Yes, yeah. So definitely depending on science, but
yeah,
that's a bit hypocrite, isn't it?
I think it is. Yes, absolutely. So what was the intro he did?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
What was the next thing you wanted to discuss? Because you have prepared some clips you want to add to the video later on.
I had this lovely 2 points basically where he tries to fill the discussion. Maybe good to just point out quickly to the Black Israelites. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I didn't really go into that because I thought it looked a little bit too racist to me, and I don't want to go in that route.
So I basically downloaded this video and asked around,
Jews, you know,
and somebody came back and explained to me that this is actually what is it?
Ever say something like that, you know, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Black Israelites, that is this extremist group from the United States.
Turned out to be
made this original video.
Yes, and
And he simply latches onto it and starts with a really weird argument to keep on going.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
basically.
But my point was in this one that I wanted to show it quickly is you see the fundamental difference between the guy on the
this
what is
topic.
that?
And right
on the left,
now in
is
this
that?
video,
Yeah, on the
we
left.
will take
You know, acting next to
Ricardo.
him, moving around a bit, thinking about his answers. And
And
Jouke sitting there like stiff as
Let's just go to one of
as
the
a stiff.
first ones. And this actually
you know, this
deals
is
with
what we saw
the
when I was in
transatlantic slave
what is
trade
it
and
in
Deuteronomy
church. They were
28,
training
so
people,
maybe
you know,
can
to keep
tell a
eye
viewer
on the
something
camera,
about that.
keep eye at your what is it, your viewers. Whenever you get angry, you put on a grimlach, a grinch. And we see that also later on in some of his videos, you know. As soon as he gets uncomfortable, he starts some kind of a fake smile. And this is what he's been learning this on his what is it, in his Sunday school or whatever. And I did the same thing with my son. My son was asking about it, and I told him, and I mimicked this, and I said, you know, what we learned before. If you want to really attract, you start lowering your voice a little bit, and you speak a bit slower, and you don't lose sight of the camera. You know, you keep looking into it because that creates a kind of what is it, confidence. And he was laughing his ass off. He's like 12 years old, but he immediately got what I meant. It was so funny.
To observe to do all his commandments.
True.
But that's why I quickly wanted to touch upon this.
All these curses shall come upon thee.
One of his other ones, I'll show you now.
Cursed
Great
shalt
excuse
thou
he has
be
for
in the
any
city.
photo, right?
He films with a fisheye lens.
This is immediately
use
starts
a
fish islands,
to
fish
trick
islands,
people
fish
into
islands.
believing
He
that
literally also put this in the video that he
horizon,
uploaded.
does not.
Yeah, was that the one with the horizon?
I
Yes,
just see right here.
Or the
that he
horizon,
uses a
sorry.
fisheye lens. Just
I
go
got
5
these,
seconds back and
what
you
is
see
it?
that already. He films with a fisheye lens.
I'm gonna turn
So
off.
yeah, if you
Wow,
use a
you're
fisheye lens to trick people.
Yeah, because there are now a lot of silence points in the discussion, so you probably really have to cut that out.
Yes, yeah, will do. But
you know,
he pulls this trick with everything, even the screenshots that I took, which was his evidence that the horizon was flat, which I then showed that it's not flat, and then he immediately jumped in saying this is fish, or he put it in his video, this is Fish Island.
yeah.
And you go like, that's not the point of the discussion.
No, I think that the main point here is, and that's always when you talk about pictures of a horizon and where the Earth seems to be flat or looks flat, the first thing you have to understand is if it didn't look flat, we would not be on a ball.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
it was
the
basically
way-
a ball in front of his own goal if he had used it, if he had understood the background behind it.
Yeah.
I basically put the ball right in front of the goal and he still missed completely.
So having a flat horizon, first of all, means you are on a ball, because what people forget is, suppose you are looking at this sea and you see the straight line that gives you the impression this is a flat Earth.
Yeah.
They then come to us and say, where is the curve? As if somehow that flat line we see has to curve down a little bit on the right and a little bit on the left.
And it doesn't
try
happen. You know, that's yeah.
Now, but try to imagine that. So it would be curving a little bit to the right. What happens when I then turn to the right a bit more? It should curve more down. And then when I'm looking to the right, in their eye of a globe, it would curve down so much that I was not looking at the horizon anymore. And the only way you can do that is when you're not on the globe, when you are far away from a ball, you will get that effect.
Yeah.
So there are many videos, many animations, many models available online that show that a flat horizon is not an argument for a flat Earth.
Yeah.
And it's even stronger, the fact that you have an horizon is also, whether it curves or not, the fact that there is an horizon is also proof of a globe. Because it means that somewhere close by, 6 miles out, the vision stops. Suddenly everything is behind that is no longer visible.
Yeah.
And that can only be if it curves away from you. Otherwise, it would really get up to eye level, which it never does. And then it would, let's say, the horizon would become blurry, details would get smaller and smaller. I would still, from the Netherlands, see the United Kingdom, England.
Yeah.
But it would be blurry, whatever, because if there's a lot of atmosphere in between, you might have some humidity that doesn't allow for the best of view. But we don't see that. We see if you have good weather, you have a very sharp horizon, and that means something is curving away there. And and the way to test it is go with a boat and just go a little bit further, and you see that you start to go down. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but of course that's Fish Island. That's immediately the answer that is. That was
not
so
if
obvious.
Not if I have a nice straight horizon and a boat disappearing behind it. Then it's not Fish Islands.
No, but that's the claim that Jouke is going to make. It was very clear. Any kind of photo material or video, he's immediately going to jump and say Fish Islands, Fish Islands. That was literally what he did when I showed the video from Critical Think, I think.
Okay. Well, but maybe that was because that wasn't that a compressed picture?
I don't know, but it's just a tube that was used, stuck to a
That's what the Critical Think. I know what you know. That for instance is one of the simple tests anybody can do.
Yeah.
To check whether the horizon is at eye level or not, and all you need is a water level, a carpenter's level, and a tube on top without any lens in it, and then go up on a hill, because Critical Think stayed at the coast.
Yeah.
But he could have gone somewhere high up in the mountains, and I know there's Jess Koslowski, or what is his name? I would have to check him out. Who let me see. Who has a lot of theodolite recordings, and he actually went up in the mountains, and you see that the table we used the last time, which says how much does the horizon drop? Well, it's 0.045 degrees at 2 meters.
Yeah.
It's 0.3 at 100 meters. It's already 3.2 when you're at 10 kilometers high. So when in a plane, you can actually really see it. And he did that with a theodolite up to 4,000 meters, I believe, in the Rocky Mountains somewhere in Colorado. And he showed that the horizon actually drops more the farther up you go.
Yeah.
So again, and at that moment already the whole flat Earth is debunked, because that's one of his arguments. It's flat because no, you don't see movement. What was it? The horizon always rises to eye level.
And it
that is not true. Water always finds its level. Now, if you understand simple gravity, then you know that level means same distance to the center of gravity. And that is the model. You can't change the model. If you want to attack the model, you have to do it with the model and not change and create your own model. Then the horizon is flat. We have just discussed that.
Yeah.
And then the other one, which he came up with, were the abyssal plains. And it was absolutely silly, because if there is anything he can't verify himself, then it is a plane 3,000 meters deep under the ocean.
Exactly. So that's why I immediately latched onto that and said, "Have you been there?" It was like, I think I screwed up my language there and said it's being measured in meters above sea level. It's meters below sea level. So it's just another story about water
because
levels.
Yeah, and he could then have said, or better have said, is it at Arkansas or Kansas, the flat state in the U.S. There is this pancake video where they apparently have a very big part of one of the biggest states in the United States that is almost flat.
Yeah.
But again, the people who measured that did it based on the distance to the center of the globe, because that is how we define flat, how we define level.
Yeah. But even those pictures, you know, this was his argument. I got evidence, and this is hilarious. He's still manning his YouTube search, claiming that it's Google Scholar, which is of course a big joke. But then he says, I've looked at these videos, and that's on purpose. I took the screenshots from his own video and showed that even in Arkansas, the horizon isn't flat.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have any answers for that one. It was like immediately trying to change the topic, huh?
Yeah. What I think people should do if they want to debunk the globe is first show that they at least understand the model.
Yeah.
And then start first debunking the Greek.
Yes.
Because why would we be discussing NASA or whatever when 400 years or 300 years before Christ we had people like Aristarchus of Samos who discovered that the constellations of the stars change.
Yes, yeah.
Jouke will tell you they don't because he's looking in the wrong direction, but they change. And the Greek guy discovered that, and he tried to figure out how the hell is that possible. And he basically then made the basis of that we should be going around the sun.
Yes, yeah.
And Copernicus mentions him later. And the guy also was looking at Mercury and Venus, the way they would behave, that he could only come to the conclusion that must all turn around the sun. So if he wants to attack the globe model, what you need to do is first show that these observations are wrong, and that you have a fucking good explanation how that could work on a flat Earth.
Yeah, yeah.
And the first thing he should do is show that the moon is getting smaller when it moves further away during the night.
Which is what we don't see.
But, yeah, we don't. But the sun is the problem. There is that all these idiots are overexposing the camera. And then it looks very big and bright, and then just before it sets, it suddenly gets small. You know? That's just silly. So with the moon, and the best would be to have sunglasses in front of your camera, and then you follow the moon from rise up to the highest point, and then when it sets again, you will see there is no change in size, and it should change by from full size to 25% of the size. During one evening. So it is so simple. I've just been watching other discussions on YouTube, and they're all about whether satellite photographs are composites and whatever. And I think, come on, guys, that's not even the discussion. We're talking about the flat Earth versus a globe Earth. And when it's a globe Earth, we talk about one that moves around the sun and not the sun around the globe. That's it.
This was so frustrating. Jouke was extremely disrespectful when I tried to explain a little bit about satellite imagery. I mean, I've used it quite a lot, but he was continuously making silly faces and what is it?
As if you were talking nonsense.
Yeah.
So the old Landsat imagery that we use,
come on, what happened to this one?
That you can see would create 8 bands of
and
information.
that brings me to the point. That's a test he can do at home. Very simple. He is making that stupid argument of continents not being the same size in some pictures from Earth.
What is it? Climatological, meteorological.
Now we know
verification.
he has a globe because he showed it.
So the old Landsat imagery that we use,
exactly.
there's a nice picture on the left.
So all the
would create 8
Twit
bands of
has to do,
information,
Twat has to do,
and
is
we would
put
add,
it on the
the
table,
necessary
take a camera
color to
with
it to be able to
some
verify
zoom
it.
function,
Yeah.
first go as
man.
close as possible as he can, so that he has the full globe in his frame, and then pick a position that he looks at either Africa or Australia or North America, make a picture, and then he has to walk as far away from his globe as he can, and then zoom in up to the point that he again fills the full frame of his camera at maximum zoom.
Yeah.
And then make a picture again, and then compare the two continents he sees, and he will see there are huge differences. And that the whole discussion of whether we see or it seems that a continent is bigger, smaller, has only to do with the fact at what distance and with what type of lens the photo was taken from Earth.
Yes. Yeah.
And he can do that at home. It's such a simple test.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah?
That's been my whole point. But he's so what is it? Dishonest and prejudiced in his findings. He's not even willing to go out and do these simple tests.
Yeah, but I think it's fear.
I'm for certain it's fair. He's so afraid
Yeah.
to be meaningless in the bigger picture.
Yeah, well, that's their idea. But I don't think so. I think if there was a God, I don't really believe that, but suppose there is a God, I would say it's much more interesting to have a God that created the entire universe than just a stupid pizza in under a dome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? So, and that was also a point, because he mentioned a certain guy at one moment, that he was following, or who convinced him somehow. And then I dove into it. You gave me the correct name of that guy, I believe. And then I found that guy was behind a very nice YouTube video called The Principle.
Yes. Yeah.
And that basically is a sort of, a video made by creationists. But at least they understand, and they don't hide it, that we are in a huge universe on a globe Earth that travels through space.
Yeah. And that makes it for me so exciting. It's so interesting to see, man. We have so much to explore.
Yeah. But it is strange that the one moment he wants to use one argument of that guy, we are all in the center of the universe.
Yep.
And then he ignores all the rest. And he does that a number of times with arguments. He does
that all the time.
He's cherry picking. Yeah.
This was the point I've looked into his Chicago skyline claim.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Rhetoric has already debunked this, as he says, in fucking 2015.
Yeah. But also the Gish, the guy I mentioned, and the guy who made the original photo.
Yes.
Because what they all forget is that photo was not taken from the beach of the lake, but from a dune 80 meters high. Yeah. True. So that was those are the things where I think that that makes basically having a discussion also not very useful, because if I would have to go into a discussion with him or his friend, I'm not afraid to do that. I would really love to do that, but I'm not going to go into discussions where I get other people's videos that are presented as proof. And they have not done a single thing themselves. Because then I better go and discuss with the guy who made that other video.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, for me, it was also not really, I've been looking here also now into the Indonesian flat earthers. You will not believe how many there are. But for me, Jouke is basically an easy chew toy to be able to, to get a bit experience with how to do this and what kind of arguments to have and how they try to move the goalpost, etc. So I mean, he was
Exactly,
a very easy target, and he was replying to me. So let's go, let's do this, let's figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And
again,
maybe good also. I'll keep switching a bit between topics. So his argument is that I set the agenda, and that he cannot recall that we agreed on first-hand evidence.
Okay,
yeah, but that's obvious.
You
You showed the email, and
so-called
it is
Exactly.
exactly as
what
you said.
It wasn't true.
I sent him a nice email, and I proposed this. What is it? This agenda.
What was not true? What I said?
And then he immediately.
You basically suggested that the Southern Cross, that we
I
can,
picked the wrong one.
that we are able to see it. That is the question.
Yeah, this is.
Where is the evidence that the Earth is not flat and
So he's trying to change the goalpost to
Where is it?
Agreed on 4.8.
Start an argument about the curve.
My 4 points now.
When we had clearly determined.
Okay, what's the point with the satellites? What is the point with this so-called South Pole?
It's of course ridiculous that he tries to do this. This is nonsense.
Right, and at that point, but we basically already discussed it now that
Yeah.
the horizon drops. You have a horizon, which is proof of, and here indeed you show the email, or you're going to show the email because you have some delay.
Yes, yeah.
Where you clearly made agreements with him on what the discussion was going to be about.
Yeah. And he keeps doing this. You know, he'll sit there, and as soon as there's any evidence that he isn't right, he immediately tries to change the discussion, move the goalposts, try to have an argument about the curvature, which we never agreed upon.
True.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, the curvature is quite simple. If he wants to hear that, the only thing I can say is go out and make a picture of a boat or follow a boat that goes away from you, and you have your curvature.
Yes. It's one of the
and I have 3 videos completely filled with compilations of boats going over the curve. So I challenge him to debunk that, because whatever other point they can come up with, which they call refraction, I already made a video on that as well, showing that if the Earth was flat, there would be no refraction, and nothing can go behind the so-called curve.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
There was one thing that I remember that. That is a thing where I thought you interrupted him a little bit too rude. He has this thing because he's influenced by Rory Cooper, my perspective.
Yes, yeah.
And he has seen this video of where Rory tries to explain that because the Earth is not only turning, but also at the same time moves around the sun, and doing that at 100,000 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
That during the recording of a star trail in 3 hours' time, we would have moved like 300,000 kilometers. And that would be perpendicular to Polaris. So, yes, that happens. Now the question is that something we should see? Now, my perspective has fooled Jouke to think that he now should see the circles we see as star trails, that they should be more spirals. Because we move compared to Polaris. Now, the thing he doesn't realize is that if we move 300,000 kilometers in 3 hours' time, that is approximately a third, I believe, I do it from my head now, by heart. That's a third of the diameter of the sun. But Polaris is estimated to be 40 times bigger than the sun.
Yes, yeah.
So it would be 120th of the diameter of Polaris. So if there would be any spiraling seen, it would be so much as 120th of the diameter of Polaris, which is just a dot far away.
Yeah.
So yes, he might have a point, but what he forgets is what it means at that distance. And therefore, yes, we move, but you can't see it. And it will take a month or even more to be able to see a small deviation. And during a whole year, astronomers can actually calculate this parallax to Polaris, and therefore we know how far it is away.
Yes, yep. And again, I simply use Stellarium to show that over the course of a year you see a small wobble of Polaris.
Yeah, but you did go in very hard, and he was still trying to explain. That is the only thing I wanted to say.
That's true,
in favor of Jouke. Yeah.
The point is, when we are rotating once a day around our own axis, you cannot put on a camera that 10 trails, the 3-month period star trails.
No, of course not.
That's
you only have
impossible. You cannot see that. You can only see it by the changing of the zodiac. Yeah. And that's what he's not willing to admit. He's just looking at Polaris and saying, see, it doesn't change. Whereas if you look south and you see the zodiac changing, that's a clear evidence of looking different away from different points through the galaxy.
Yeah, and then we were back with to Aristarchus of Samos, who already 300, 400 years before Christ discovered that.
Yes, yeah.
So, anything else?
He immediately Gish gallops. We can talk for another hour if you want to, but let's move on.
No, I will have to make dinner.
Maybe at a certain point you can see the Southern Cross.
This claim of him was great. He was. He created an argument saying that we cannot see the Southern Cross all year round.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I hadn't checked that, so I kept interjecting, saying to him, "I never said that."
Cross, but it is
of course, he tried to put his word in my mouth, but there's clear evidence. People can look at the video that I never said that.
Year round.
Right. And then I went back into Stellarium and said, let's see, can we actually see that?
Maybe at a certain point you can see
again, using a tool that he loves, I can actually from Boger see the Southern Cross all year round.
See the Southern Cross.
But there are some things we need to take into account here. Because what happens with the Southern Cross,
you can see the Southern Cross, but
the first thing, Jouke thinks that we think, that globals think, we turn around the Southern Cross. And that's not the case.
We
turn around Sigma Octantis, and the Southern Cross is at 60 degrees, approximately, which is the same on the Northern Hemisphere as Ursa Major, the Big Dipper. Now, if you look at the Big Dipper, it is not always visible if you are high enough north. No, I have to think. If I go south or north, I would have to check. But there are some months in the year where there are locations on the Northern Hemisphere that you cannot see the Big Dipper. The same goes at the Southern Hemisphere for the Southern Cross.
Yeah.
I've been fooling around with taking the most southern part in South America, Africa, and Australia, and then I went through all the months and through all the hours that it was night. And there are occasions where the Southern Cross disappears. It's not entirely visible because if you're high enough on the top or somewhere, you can't see it. But the same happens with the Big Dipper, and therefore is no argument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They both have the ball, and they're probably related, the wobble.
Right, and exactly. And the other thing is what he doesn't realize, because it's nice as say, hey, look, the star trails should spiral, but they are round. So therefore, it is not a globe. Now, I just explained why. But the same moment that he says that, he makes already the mistake, because he should also argue or think, if the Earth is flat, what should it look like?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And then, only if you are at the North Pole, you will have perfect circles. And the further away you go from the North Pole, the more it becomes ovals, or ellipses, whatever you want to call them.
Well, it becomes even worse, because it would mean that the Southern Cross also moves sideways over a period of
Yeah,
24 hours.
yeah. The moment you are close to indeed the ice wall, then suddenly everything, all the stars should move sideways.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is already a contradiction in terms.
Yes. Yeah.
So he tries to attack because he wants to see a spiral. Now we're just explaining that the spiral is there, but it's smaller than the point of Polaris.
Yeah.
But he then completely neglects the shape of the star trails. And the other one, last one is, if we then go to the southern hemisphere and we do a star trail there around Sigma Octantis, then we have a star trail turning the other way around, exactly as you would expect on a globe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, he has not given any evidence. He has pointed to some videos he has seen, and apparently he is easy to convince. He believed it was a globe because of pictures people had shown him.
Yes.
Not that he had studied it at school and understood the whole principle. No, the guy is 24 years old. He's probably done some University of Twente stuff, and he believed the Earth was a globe because of pictures they showed, and then suddenly he was going to investigate geocentrism, and then NASA was fraud, and he was suddenly flat earther. Now,
Yes. Yeah.
I can't make head or tail on such a story. It's very, very stupid in my humble opinion.
Well, that's something we can ask him about if we ever do this joint. If he agrees to it.
Oh yeah.
So come explain this, Jouke. How does that work?
Well, first do a simple test yourself so that we at least can discuss the test you did and whether he set up the test correctly and whether he interprets the outcome of the test correctly, and see if he can do one single test himself.
Yes, yeah. That was actually the point that I was trying to make with him with the stupid water bottle, actually.
Yeah, well, I found
it's like
it very
10
nice.
minutes of work, start that off. And immediately one of the globe earthers left a message and said, hey, you didn't get it quite correct. And it was fun to actually do the discussion. This was so much fun again. I was looking through these videos and you go like, huh? How does work? And then you really need to go back into all the physics and things and see where they actually pull the bait and switch. Mm-hmm. Because in every video that he shows there is a bait and switch. It's unbelievable. But at first, you know, when you don't know you don't have the knowledge anymore, the exact details of how it works, you've forgotten. At first you go like, huh? Why? What happened? What is this? What is wrong? And then you delve back into the details of it, and then you so quickly see where they pull the bait and switch. That is just sad. It's like so fake.
Yeah, the one I also liked in your discussion with him that you asked him what is density.
Yes. Hang on.
Density of the stuff. That's the circular reasoning. What's your definition of density?
Is it starting from the start, or is it
the product of
he then tries to explain it, and the only thing he can say is density or something like that.
And, how it is organized based upon the differences in density. So
this was so weird. Here is where I did a bit of a screw up with the layout,
and not different layers of different gases.
And he literally doesn't want to admit that he doesn't understand it. And the only thing I can look into that.
I can think about it. But you know, we see
and that is
happening.
strange because the education I had is one of the things they teach us about density. Is they gave us a lot of pieces of materials and said, figure this out, go and measure, think about the test. So we would do things like a displacement of water so that you could define the volume of the object you were measuring, etc., etc., to figure out what density was. And then once you have that and you understand gravity, then you can start talking about buoyancy. Huh?
Yeah.
And the fact that he can't even explain what density is yeah, you had him there. It was good. And I think that if people want to make a point of saying gravity doesn't exist because it is buoyancy and density, and you can't even explain what density really is, then you already, you lost it as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, yeah. I think I'm still trying to get to, understand what they actually mean. What's their problem with gravity? There is a downward force. What do you want to call it? He cannot explain that. Then he wants to change it into something like density. Whereas in science, density is not a force. So you can have this huge argument, but trying to replace words with something else. But the whole theory stays the same.
Yeah. No, I think the main problem they have with this is that for them it's they think that after the Big Bang and the way we think the universe was created, it was the gravitational forces that made the Earth get its shape, the sun gets its shape, and the movement of all the planets around each other and around the sun and moons around planets, etc. And the way the galaxies circle, that's all based on gravity. And if you therefore can dismiss gravity as a real force, you have at least a basis to attack the globe model. But then some people say, yeah, maybe it's magnetism or maybe it's electrostatic forces. And then I say, I don't give a shit. Because if these forces are the cause, then it's still causing the things to turn around each other. So that doesn't help you.
I think the whole argument is even simpler than that. Because if we would prove gravity, that also immediately leads to that the Earth is round, that the Earth is a globe. Because gravity immediately forces that to happen. And I think that's the whole argument, that they are not willing to accept gravity.
No.
Because by definition it means then the Earth is a globe. And I think that's the only reason why they're attacking it and trying to replace it with something else.
No. But that doesn't work, because what they simply also forget, can you just imagine a dome? Do you have any ideas what kind of wheels are below it to make it turn around?
Yes, yeah.
I'm not even talking about that the whole construct would simply melt under its own weight. But I really would like to see how their God made this construction and what type of engine he uses to power the movement of the dome, and what type of wheels are there that can hold trillions and trillions of ton of weight. It's amazing, man.
Yes, yeah. It's well, that's what my point was. I thought he would have at least some story about how the dome was made, what it was. But then he got into his molten glass, and that's only an analogy, and blah blah blah, and this and that. And I had a whole list ready. How does it work? How thick is it? What kind of mass does it have? How does it keep the water on top of it? He claims that there is water over it.
Yeah.
How strong does it need to be? Is there any kind of glass that can do that? But no. I gave up on that one. He couldn't even answer the basic questions on that.
The biggest dome you can make out of glass is probably 20 or 30 meters, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then you can make a dome supported by steel and etc. And you can make 300 meters of dome, and then you are basically at the maximum we can do. But if it is molten glass, it is fluid. First of all, molten glass is molten glass is not translucent. It's orange. It has
Yeah, it has the glow.
And then it melts, so it would fall down. But on the other hand, it can't melt because there's water on top, so it can't be molten glass. So you get this discussion of stupid assumptions and models that can't even be close to reality.
Yeah. And it becomes totally ridiculous.
But I think we covered now most of it, haven't we?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's time for me to get a drink before I start making dinner. And then you have still some time to maybe edit stuff. And otherwise, if you have a rough version, you can already send it to me and I can have a look.
I'll do it. Yeah, I'll edit tomorrow. I'll add the challenge in. I really want to put that one in.